Hello again, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Parker Meters Folly Tuesday. Every day is Parking Meters Folly in the city of Chicago. The great Mick Dumke is standing by, the man who knows more about parking meters than is humanly possible. People call me, go, Ben, what about the parking meter? And I always say, just call Mick Dumke. I can't remember the year they passed it. Such a terrible deal, but it's a deal. It's just like, wow, the monster from the lagoon that just keeps emerging. Before we get to Parking Meters Folly, and Mick and I have been geeking out over this on our own for about the last week or so, so you're going to get to hear us in full fury. I just have to go back in time to a conversation, a recording I had with the great Ramana Hussein, Mick's wife, that occurred last week, and I got a very interesting letter in response from a listener. I'll call Beth, as that's her first name. And so Beth sort of took Ramana and myself to task a bit, and I think it's well-deserved being taken to task. And I will read to you the letter that she wrote to us, and then I'll riff on it, and then I'll bring on the great, the legendary Mick Dumke, the pride and joy of St. Joseph, Michigan. So here we go. Mick didn't know I could pull that St. Joseph's hat, grab it out of the hat. He's like, oh, man. All right, here we go. Hi, Ben. I just got finished listening to you and Ramana discuss Mamdani. I've been following him probably as long as Ramana. I enjoy her appearances and usually with much of what she has to say. In this podcast, you both admitted the key roles the DSA played in getting Mamdani elected. Mamdani joined in 2017, and both his organizing director and communication directors are lefties who knew the candidate well. I listened to both of them talk about the campaign on the podcast The Dig, where they discuss the work on the campaign in detail. I recommend listening. In particular, Tasha Van Oken, field director, is credited with engaging 100,000 on-the-ground folks who knocked on 3 million doors. Dang. And this would not have been possible without the wholehearted support and participation of DSA. Those are my 2 cents. Well, those are an excellent 2 cents, Beth, and I am guilty. Guilty. I'll let Ramana speak for herself, but I am guilty of giving too much credit to Mamdani. And this is like a challenge. Anytime I'm talking about a movement, where you have to balance the work of the people in the field who are doing the grunt work, who believe as passionately in the movement as the person leading the movement. You have to balance the contributions that they make with the contributions that the leader makes. And it's usually a once-in-a-lifetime charismatic leader is what it takes to get the kind of lefty change that we saw in New York. I'm thinking here in the city of Chicago. And, the great Harold Washington, you had an unbelievable charismatic leader in Harold Washington, and then there was this giant movement, a grassroots, and there were so many people that Mick knows, actually, so many of them have moved on, have died, I should say, like the great Lou Palmer, who was involved in the movement, Conrad Worrell. Mick and I both know Conrad, may he rest in peace. And so there were many people like Conrad and Lou Palmer who were involved. And then beyond them, there were people, activists, that door knockers, and thousands of people. You're right. My point is that I'm maybe over enthusiastic about Mamdani. I think he's an extraordinary, charismatic, very smart individual, and he's put together his communications core, the likes of which I've never seen in modern lefty politics. I guess you could argue that Bernie Sanders in 2016 had a similar operation, but I've never seen anything like this. The way they respond to things, the real-time events, with humor and compassion in many cases, his quickness on his own feet when he's when he's dealing with a debate stage or on the street interviews. A very talented young, what do I call him? He's not yet a superstar politician. So plus I'm just like fascinated by the whole dynamics of the fight he's involved with in New York and the ongoing struggles he's having in New York. And I always think about and contrast it and compare it to Mayor Johnson here in Chicago, and why Mamdani seems to be so much more successful than Mayor Johnson. I'm wondering, why is that? So yes, this is a long way of saying I overlooked completely, totally the people who were knocking on the doors. And we were talking about the success Mamdani had last week. There, I did it again. The success that lefties in New York had last week when they elected 3 lefty Congress people in races that probably 6 months ago you would never think they would have won. So generally people say, oh, Mamdani was 3 for 3 on his endorsements, when in reality, the movement is far greater than one man. So I am chastened there, and I admit I give too much credit to Mandani, and I overlook the people knocking on the doors. I'm not going to say Ramana Hussein does that. I'll let her speak for herself, but I definitely do that. So shout out to all the door knockers in New York City who did the hard work. All right, Mick, I open with a mea culpa. Do you have any thoughts you want to add to that sort of before we move into parking meter gate? Any thoughts you want to add to the notion that you need a charismatic leader and hundreds and hundreds of people, door knockers in the field? Go ahead.
I think it's an excellent point. Appreciate your mea culpa. Perhaps the most famous social movement of the last century, the civil rights movement, was very similar, where you had, maybe the case study in this, right, where you obviously had Martin Luther King Jr., who was the face of much of that, but so many other people who were literally out in the field in organizing, who were, holding secret meetings in Mississippi and Alabama when MLK often would kind of come in for the big rallies. There were all these people who were doing a lot of the very dangerous grunt work along the way, men and women who were often overlooked. So we could go on, but I think it's an excellent point, and you're right. Just about every movement is situated similarly, and for it really to take off, you do need to have some kind of dynamic figure, usually at the head of it, especially if it's going to be sustained. But got to have all those people on the ground doing the door knocking, the handshaking, just kind of trying to get a critical mass behind what you're working on. So
yeah,
great point.
Yeah, and we'll add before we move on that even the great Harold Washington, he lost the first time he ran for mayor, got clobbered. And this is what, 1977, when he was running to fill out the old man Mayor Daley's term. So even the great Harold Washington was incapable and charisma alone to be elected mayor. It did take a movement to elect him. So, all right, enough on that. Thank you very much, Beth. Appreciate the letter. Let's move on to parking meters, Follies. And I urge everybody, when you're done listening to this conversation, to go check out the recent articles Mick wrote for Block Club. Well, they're all excellent. The opening salvo in his latest series, in the Parking Meter Gate, sort of lays out all the problems with how Mayor Johnson has handled this issue. But the last one was about the city council, quote unquote, debate. Was hilarious. There should be a sitcom about this Chicago City Council in general, I think, but at least a couple episodes on parking meters. Anytime they deal with the parking meters, they manage to make a mockery of everything. But not just the city council, the mayors as well. All right, Mick, I'll set this up with this. When I think about parking meters, and you can take it back to 2008, the original sale, I think there's three big objections that I can think of. There's three big reasons to hate this deal. And number one is the cost of parking. It raised the cost of parking in the city of Chicago. And I think most Chicagoans, that's about all they know when it comes to the parking meter deal. Two, they're the larger terms of the deal on how it's so favorable to the company that purchased the control of the parking meters. And then the process, three, which is the one that you and I spend so much time on, which is probably of the least amount of interest to the folks in the city of Chicago. I will say that. And yet it may be the most important, because if we're ever going to come out with deals or arrangements, be they for gambling, let's say, that's in the news these days, or parking meters, you have to have an open, fair, honest, transparent process in which you have faith that your leaders are objectively sifting through all the various issues at stake before they reach a decision. And that, to put it mildly, was nowhere near any city hall back in 2008 when Richard Baby Daley, M. Daley, cut the first parking meter deal and then got the city council to pass it. And sorry to say this, lefties, it was nowhere near, as far as I could tell, City Hall in this year when Mayor Brandon Johnson stepped in to potentially buy the parking meters. So that's my general view of things. And I'll turn things over to you to take it away with why was the city attempting to buy the parking meters in this go around. So go ahead.
Well, first of all, Ben, what everyone needs to know is that you and I have been talking about Chicago's parking meter system for 18 years. It hasn't literally been 18 years straight, but sometimes it feels like it. As I was saying to Chris, I had a dream about the parking meters a couple of nights ago.
Wow.
And that's really scary when this thing is getting into your dreams. So I'm astounded by the fact that here we are, there's another saga in this. And I'm assuming at this point in time that whoever is still reporting on Chicago will continue to report on the parking meter deal for the next 58 years, because that's how long we have left on the original deal that Mayor Daley cut to sell the rights to the parking meter system. But am I surprised? Why are we talking about it again? Well, the short answer is we're talking about it again is because the conglomerate, the partnership led by investment bank Morgan Stanley that originally bought the rights to the meter system back in 2008, started their ownership or control the system in 2009. That partnership wants to sell the concession. They use this term, the concession. They want to sell the rights to the meters. And in the process of letting people know they wanted to sell it, trying to collect bids, and now trying to push through a sale of their rights to the meter system, that has brought City Hall back into direct discussions about who's going to have these rights and all the revenues that go with them for the next 58 years.
Wow. And so is there language in the original agreement that governs what happens if the Morgan Stanley outfit wants to sell?
Yes, there is. And it's in legalese. It's not hard to read, but it is both particular enough that everyone seems certain that the city council needs to sign off on any sale of the meter rights, but yet it's vague enough that no one knows what the city council does after it takes a vote. Like, what if they say no? What happens then? That is not spelled out in the agreement. And there are ongoing discussions, including discussions among very high-priced lawyers about what could happen next. So the city is currently involved on two levels, Ben, or I should say over the last year has been involved on two levels. First of all, the city was involved because Brandon Johnson and his team, which includes both other city officials and paid outside consultants and lawyers, they put in a bid to buy the meter rights back last year. And we can get in the details in a minute, but the bottom line is we, the members of the public, let alone members of the media, are still trying to figure out what happened during the city's bid process. Mm-hmm. And then the second part of it is when the city decided not to go forward with the purchase of the meter system to get control back, then the Morgan Stanley and its partners decided to sell to another group of private investors. And so now the city council has to sign off on that sale. So the city had a bite at the apple, another bite at the apple to reacquire control of the meter system, pass that up, and now there is a whole new set of discussions and debates about what the city council's powers are and what it is required to do over the next few weeks.
Yeah, and so see that, ladies and gentlemen? Nothing is ever clear in this parking meter deal.
That is the bottom line. I just spent a lot of words saying what you just said.
Nothing is ever clear. Yeah. And so right now, follow this, Chicago. The Chicago City Council is debating whether they're going to approve the sale of the parking meters from one collection of rich and powerful interests to another collection of rich and powerful interests. And a lawyer employed by the seller is saying the city council has no choice but to vote yes to confirm the sale, which is so outrageous in and of itself, but we're going to hold off on that. Let's go back to the decision that the Morgan Stanley Group said. They purchased the meters for $1.1 billion. They purchased the rights to the meters for $1.1 billion. And it quickly became apparent that the meters were worth far more, estimated. The estimated number I always throw out is 10 billion. So in its an infinite wisdom, Mayor Daley sold an asset worth $10 billion for $1.1 billion, making him the worst overseer of assets since the Chicago Bulls' last general manager. And I've just been waiting to use that line for a long time. Is it worse than trading IO? Yes, I think it's worse than trading IO for nothing. All right.
So, an analogy that only Ben Joravsky is capable of sharing with us all, but it is not incorrect.
It is not incorrect at all. All right. So fast forward, they go, we don't want to sell this anymore. We've already drained enough money out of it. We're going to sell it for like at least double what we purchased for it and get out of this. So they found some other bunch of rich people who wanted to buy it. The city, unbeknownst to anybody, was, as Mick just got finished saying, they put together this team with the city and its teams, including outsiders, to come up with a rival bid to perhaps buy it back. So let's explore that for a while, Mick. Number one, why, in your humble opinion, did Mayor Johnson not tell anybody that he was thinking of buying the meters back? Again, go back to those first three problems with the meters. Number three is the process and the lack of transparency. So I would have thought, silly me, who is just talking into a microphone, that Mayor Johnson would have said, you know, folks, there's they want to sell. We're thinking of buying. We're studying it. I got this team put together. I got this lawyer, Billy Bob, the lawyer. I got Joey Joe. He's my strategic analyst. I got the smartest people in my administration working on this. And we're going to have a very open process because we know you were burned the last time. It wasn't open. But he didn't do any of that, Mick. Help me understand why he didn't come clean and tell us he was thinking of buying the meters. Go ahead, Mick.
I have the same question, Ben. As you and I documented back in 2008, 2009, Mayor Daley and his team spent more than a year putting together the original parking meter deal in a way that no one else knew about it except the people working on the deal. And we were told then, I'm told again recently, that this is the way that financial transactions and deals, big kind of sales and stuff, this is the way they work, is that they work in secret. They do negotiations, bidding, and all this kind of stuff behind closed doors. But most of these deals do not involve pieces of the city streets. They do not involve public assets. They do not involve something that is actually owned by the taxpayers and the people who live in Chicago. And so yet they use those same tactics both the first time and now this time. So to answer your question, why did Brandon Johnson follow the same process? I don't know, other than he and his people were apparently told that this is the way these kind of transactions are done. If you want to play ball, you're going to have to play ball by these rules. And so they were presented with what has alternately been described as a non-disclosure agreement or a confidentiality agreement. Whatever it is, they signed something that committed them to secrecy on the bidding process for the rights to the meters. And this happened at some point in 2025 that they signed this document. And this is very important because ever since, like, we don't know when exactly they signed it. We don't know exactly what this NDA or the confidentiality agreement or whatever it's called. We don't even know what it's called, Ben. Whatever it is, we haven't seen the language for it. They refuse to share it. Yes, I'm the FOIA nerd. I've FOIA'd it from multiple city departments. They refuse to hand it over. So they say that the confidentiality agreement is itself covered by the confidentiality agreement. So the mayor and his team have continued to lean on this and say they can't really talk about their bid process. And by the way, they can't talk very much about the sale to the new group of investors either because of this confidentiality agreement. So that's what they're claiming.
All right. And I'm going to say this in anticipation of complaints that will come out from Northside liberals. Northside liberals, I've lived among you for a long time. I know how your little brains work. And this is what a Northside liberal will say, Mick.
Well, Ben, you don't understand how the business world works. The business world always does things in secrecy behind doors. There's non-disclosure agreements they must sign. This is the way it works.
To which I say, Northside liberal, and to piggyback on what Mick said, we're not selling, one entity from Amazon to like Apple. We're selling the freaking rights to the streets of Chicago. And supposedly it's an open process. And our mayor could say to the muckety muck lawyers who are trying to sell the deal, no, we're not signing your stupid non-disclosure agreement. We believe in open disclosure, not closed disclosure, not non-disclosure. So you want to sell the meters? You got to play by our rules. And I said this to you, Mick, on the phone a million times. You know, the rule breaker right now in America is Donald Trump. He breaks rules all the time, and then he sends his little lawyers in the court to win, and they win more often than not. Well, you got his team and the Supremes helps. But the point is, Mick, why is it that Democrats, like, they don't have any guts on anything, Mick? They're like, oh, the lawyer told me I have to sign a non-disclosure agreement before I sell the rights to the streets. So if the lawyer says it, it must be true. Help me on this, Mick. Why can't help you play by these rules? Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I think the short answer is probably because they have just as many relationships with the investment banking and the corporate world as the other party does. And so they're unwilling to offend them. They're unwilling to break the rules that have been established in this world. You and I aren't part of this world. And so when we're talking about transactions worth billions of dollars, when I shop at Aldi, whatever, and I'm one of the lucky people who has a steady income, knock on wood, and all that. What I'm saying is these dollars and these transactions that these entities are involved in are way out of the realm of, it's just beyond comprehension for most normal people in America. And so why can't the city, from the beginning, why couldn't the city say, if you want a piece of our parking meters, if you want the rights to the parking meters, you're going to play by our rules, because this is a public asset. I mean, yes, that probably sounds naive to your North Side liberals you're talking about and other people from the finance world, but I don't understand why the most powerful mayor in the country at that time couldn't have set his own rules if he's contemplating leasing a public asset for so long that it amounts to a sale of that asset. And I certainly don't understand why a progressive-minded mayor wouldn't come in and take just the same tough tactic and say, we're going to be involved in this, but we're going to find some clause somewhere in that meter deal that allows us to assert our rights as the as the lessor, the person leasing the meters, to set some terms for the conversation going forward. I just believe where there's a will, there's a way somehow.
Yeah, there is definitely a way to do this. And by the way, I just want to remind listeners, this is perhaps the most egregious example of claiming a non-disclosure agreement prevents the public knowing what the public should know, since Mayor Rahm's infamous non-disclosure agreement that he signed with Amazon, which brought out one of the great quotes of all time. Some mucking muck who worked for Rahm, I think it was told France Spielman of the Sun Times. She was pressing him for details on this deal where Rauner and Rahm were turning over huge chunks of the city to Amazon. Take it, please, whatever. We want you here so bad. And I think it was Fran. If it was another reporter, I apologize. Said, what are the terms of this deal? And the muckety muck in City Hall, some guy that Rahm hired, said, what part of non-disclosure agreement don't you understand? It's just so classic snide. I'll tell you the part I don't understand. Why you dummies signed it. That's the part I don't understand. Okay, help me out of that, North Side liberals.
Remember, you can download episodes of The Ben Joravsky Show wherever you download podcasts. Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts. Just search for The Ben Joravsky Show. J-O-R-A, V as in victory, S-K-Y. Subscribe. Give us a review. But remember the rule, 5 stars only. Go find The Ben Joravsky Show wherever you download podcasts. But also, get this, Ben actually bought a website, and it's actually pretty awesome. It's thebenjoravskyshow.com. Go find it right now, bookmark it immediately, because not only can you find previous Ben Joravsky Show episodes, thebenjoravskyshow.com is also the new home for Ben Joravsky columns. You may have noticed something's missing in your Chicago Reader these days. Where'd the Ben Joravsky columns go? They're over at thebenjoravskyshow.com. Go read his latest column. He's been posting his columns at thebenjoravskyshow.com for a while now. So after you read the latest column, go check out the rest. There's tons more on the site. There's also the Benny J Book Club. What's that, you ask? It's a book club Ben talks about the latest books he read. Was it a good book? Was it a bad book? Find out at thebenjoravskyshow.com. And finally, The Ben Joravsky Show is now an independently funded podcast. That's right, Ben's footing the bill. We love what we do, and we want to keep bringing you content like this. We'd be flattered even if you consider donating to The Ben Joravsky Show. This operation now runs off the hard work of independent podcast producers who kindly give their time to keep this operation going. We'd greatly appreciate your support. Again, it's thebenjoravskyshow.com. JORA, V as in victory, SKY. Read the columns, join the book club, and find The Ben Joravsky Show and subscribe wherever you download podcasts.